Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie Kale Miller of Pandora Astrology, and with me is.
Hey guys, it's Julia Migos joining in.
And today we want to tell you about a couple of events going on in the sky here in July of 2020. One of them is that Mercury has been retrograde, and amidst all of the hubbub with the triple eclipse season that we're having right now, it's kind of gotten lost. It's certainly going to add its own layer of drama to the proceedings, but we did want to, give Mercury retrograde its due, right? And then there's also a lunation because by the end of the month, the eclipse season will be over, and we're just going to have like a normal, plain old new moon. What a relief, right? So, starting with the Mercury retrograde, which is going on here in the second half of June and the beginning of July. It started June 17th, it finishes July 12th of 2020. Mercury starts out by coming up as far as 14 degrees of Cancer and then pivots, turns retrograde on June 17th. Now, here's the thing to know about this. I give these dates and I'm very precise about the dates, but you got to remember that I am located on the west coast of the United States, and that is going to have everything to do with these dates because if something happens close to midnight and you're in a different time zone than me, well, it might be, it might look like it's off by one day. So June 17th, Mercury turns retrograde in 14 degrees of Cancer. It then proceeds backwards, meets up with the sun in what we like to call Lesser Epiphany Day, a day of insight, and quite often a day of clarity on what the heck is going on during this Mercury retrograde. And then Mercury continues retrograde or backwards and turns direct on July 12th, finishing up in 5 degrees of Cancer. And another thing that you may or may not know about Mercury retrogrades is that you really start to feel them when Mercury begins to slow down as it's approaching turning retrograde, and they're not really quite over until Mercury speeds up again after it's done. And that's sometimes called the shadow period. And it's usually about a week on either side. So that's why sometimes people feel these coming on. And another thing to remember about Mercury retrogrades is that if you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, you might actually like Mercury retrograde because it might feel like, well, for once, the whole rest of the world is actually, vibing with you on your level. And that can actually feel pretty good. So this particular one is in Cancer, and Julie, I was wondering what your thoughts are about a Mercury retrograde in Cancer. How are people likely to experience that? And also, do you think it has any connection with the eclipse season going on during it?
Hmm. Well, the sign of Cancer is the sign of the moon, which is the planet of emotions. But the planet through which this retrograde is happening is Mercury, which is the planet of the mind.
Mm.
So it kind of makes me wonder whether people's emotional communication might be kind of sort of like whether there could be kind of issues around emotional communication in general,
Mm.
communication with family,
Mm.
and or anything that has to do with security. It's a very kind of self-protective sign as well.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, people could be over emotional in their communication, and
Mm-hmm.
there could be miscommunications among family members or perhaps with your mother. Those are very Cancerian themes.
Exactly.
Um,
Like you say something and people were like, "Oh, you seem so angry when you said that." You're like, "No, I wasn't." Something kind of along that line.
Yeah,
Agreed.
like a disconnect, like an emotional
Yeah.
disconnect with the communication. And now Mercury retrograde also often has a practical effect, or maybe we should say impractical effect, because it can really mess up, life around the office. You can find that office equipment is breaking down, that letters get lost, communications get misconstrued, but also like literal physical um, messages just get tangled up as well. Even sometimes whole swaths of the internet go off. So I think that we can look for that sort of thing too. And so because when Mercury goes retrograde, there's this sort of retrospection quality, and because it's in Cancer and it's concerned with emotion and family, this could be a really good time to go back and clean up some old communications with family members. And you know,
Mm.
family, it's the people that you didn't necessarily choose, or at least not consciously, but that you know, are bound to them by blood, and you have to work it out with them as best you can. And and so this is the sort of time period when, you know, maybe those kinds of endeavors can really find an advantage. Um, so let's talk now about the new moon that's happening later in the month. There is a new moon also in the sign of Cancer. I mean, it's Cancer season, so that's no surprise, right? Um, and this particular one we're calling Dig Your Roots Deep and Reach for the Sky. And that's because the sun and moon are together in the sign of Cancer, pulling very much for depth, for emotion, for rooting in the ground, for that sense of place and belonging to land or a country. Cancer is the sign of patriotism. And then it opposes this Saturn in Capricorn, which is very like authoritative, even authoritarian. It is the father figure. It is very much about rules and structure. And so this one, this Saturn implies ambition, reaching for the sky, reaching for, you know, to build a great tower into what is possible. So, and this particular moon is happening at the end of the sign Cancer in 28 degrees, shortly before Cancer finishes, before it becomes Leo. And so you will feel this eclipse if you have anything in your chart very, very close to 28 degrees of any cardinal sign, meaning Cancer or Capricorn or Libra or Aries. And then if you have anything like up to 5 degrees before that or up to 5 degrees after that, you would still feel this eclipse. So these are the degree spans that I'm talking about. Anything in 23 to 29 degrees of any cardinal sign, anything in 0 degrees to 3 degrees of any fixed sign. And here's what those signs are. So Julia, what do you think about this moon? Isn't it a relief to have like a normal new moon instead of a freaking eclipse for
Oh my
once?
God. Yeah, that is a big relief for sure. Um, you know, moon in Cancer, it's such an emotional sign. There's so much sort of depth to the feelings of a Cancer moon. But at the same time, you've got that Saturn Pluto that Richard Tarnas, we quoted him in one of our earlier videos about the Saturn Pluto conjunction, because I mean, these guys aren't conjoined right now, but they're not too far off from each other, as that being characterized by a certain degree of contraction.
Mm,
So it almost seems like
big
this
time.
push and pull between like feeling brimming with feelings and at the same time having to just kind of,
Clamp
you
down.
know, yeah, maybe there's responsibilities, maybe there are other types of things that are required of you, so you just have to kind of shove them down a bit.
Yep. And you know, also the moon represents the people, the populace. It's sort of the grand mood, if you will.
Mm,
And look how it is opposing authority
mm,
during this moon. And it's such a precise aspect. Saturn in
oof,
28 degrees of Capricorn precisely opposed Sun and Moon in 28 degrees of Cancer. So there's a very big, I think, you know, political divide, even a social divide, a divide that is collective in nature.
yeah.
Okay. So, but I think, you know, every moon, every astrological influence really is presenting its lesson to be learned. And if you can show that you learned the lesson, well, then you don't have to get smacked on the wrist with a ruler, right? So this one really is saying, embrace both sides, own both sides for yourself. Have your feelings, yes, but also have your self-discipline.
Mm,
And the more that you can dig your roots deep into your feelings and feel that sense of place, that sense of home, that sense of belonging, while also climbing towards the sky, building towards what's possible, and having that rigor and that self authority, then I think you'll be getting through this moon just fine.
Mm,
Any other thoughts, Julia, or you think we're done for this one?
I think we wrapped it up. Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed watching this. You can always find our videos, this one and many others like it, on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology. And you may not know this, but Julie and I are available for readings, and we'd love to talk with you about how this transit affects your chart or any other transit that you might want to talk about. And we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye bye.